Okay, this is notes 2-2. First thing we want to do is identify standard form. Standard form is A, capital A. Let's go ahead and get this right. Capital A, X plus capital B, Y equals C. There is no A, B, and C. The A, B, and C are simply to tell you the order that your X's, Y's, and then your regular numbers go in. So it's X's first, then your Y's, then equal sign, then the rest of your numbers. Slope-intercept form is the one that you're most used to. It is also sometimes referred to as Y equals form. It's Y equals little m, X plus little b. The m being the slope and the little b being my y-intercept. That's my beginning point. Okay, number one, we want to write the equation for this line in slope-intercept form. So we need to identify our y-intercept. It's right here. It's where it crosses, the graph crosses the y-axis, and it crosses at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So my y-intercept, my beginning point is 7. And then to find my slope, it's rise over run. So I'm going from my beginning point to the next point down the line that is at a perfect intersection. And it's already marked for us right here. It's at a perfect intersection of X and Y. Okay, so now to get from my beginning point, I go down 1, 2, and I go over to the right 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So my slope was down 2 and over to the right 5. So now I have a slope and a y-intercept. Okay, I can now put it in slope-intercept form. Y equals m, which is my slope, negative 2/5 x plus my beginning point, my y-intercept, 7. Okay, moving on to number 2. Number 2 wants the equation for this line in standard form. So once again, we are going to get our y-intercept. And on this one, my y-intercept is negative 1, 2, 3, 4. My slope, so I'm going to that point. Slope is rise from my beginning point up 1, 2, 3 and over 1, which is reduced to 3. So now if I was in slope-intercept form, that would be y equals 3x minus 4. But it wants it in standard form, which is, remember, ax plus by equals c. So my x's have to be first. So I'm going to move my x to the front. Remember, when we swap over to the opposite side of the equal sign, we have to change signs. So it's negative 3x. The y was already on the left, and it's a positive, so it stays a positive. Then we put our bridge, and we had a negative 4. That is standard form. Now, later on, we're going to talk about not having a lead coefficient, which is at negative 3, of a negative or a fraction. But today, we're going to leave them negatives and fractions, and then we'll hit those another time. Number 3, it gives me my slope and my y-intercept. So all I'm doing is just writing it out. There's no work to be done, but it's going to want the final answer in standard form. So my slope in slope-intercept form, it would be negative 1/2 x plus 6. Now to put it in standard form, just move the x to the front. So it becomes a positive 1/2 x plus the y that was already there equals 6. Again, we'll talk about how to get rid of fractions at a later time. Number 4. It's giving me my slope, but it's also asking for a line that passes through that point, 4, 2. So we need another formula. And that formula that we're going to need is called the point slope form. So we want to write that down, point slope form. Now in point slope form, that's when I have a point and a slope, okay? And the formula is y minus y1, equals slope times x minus x1. Okay? So we can go ahead and label x, y. Those are both 1s because there are no 2s. Okay? Now we can plug it straight into our formula. Y, which is built in, minus is built in, y1 is 2, equals my slope, which is 1/3, times x minus, which is built in, x1 is 4. Now, when I have a number touching parentheses, it means to distribute. So I have to distribute that 1/3 or multiply that 1/3 times each of those. So we have y minus 2 equals 1/3 x. 1/3 times -4 would be -4/3. And now we want to go ahead and convert that -4/3 to a decimal. So it would be -0.67, or we could even go -0.6 just to go. I tell you what, let's go ahead and round that to 0.7 because it's -0.6 repeating. So we'll round it up to a -0.7 so that we'll all be on the same page. Okay, last step. It wants it in slope-intercept form, so that's y equals form. This is y minus 2. We want it to be just y equals. So I have to get rid of that minus 2. So I have to take it across the bridge. And y now equals 1/3 x minus 0.7. That -2 came across as a +2. I can go ahead and combine those. So y equals 1/3 x plus 1.3. That is in slope-intercept form. Moving on to number 5. Slope is undefined and passes through 2, 4, and standard form. We talked about an undefined slope in the first section. Undefined is a vertical line. It's a straight up and down line. It only crosses through the x-axis. So if I needed to see what it looked like, an undefined slope going through that point. So here's my y. There's my x. If I went over 2, 1, 2, up, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I put a point, an undefined line would be a straight vertical line going right up and down, right through that point. So the only thing that it's touching is the x-axis. So the equation would be x equals 2. It's touching 2 for x value anywhere along that line. So anytime I have an undefined slope, it's going to be an x equals. If it was a 0 slope, that would be a y equals because it would be a horizontal line. But that's as far as that one will go. Number 6. On number 6, we have our slope and we have an x-intercept. Now, just as we stated on x-axis, in order for it to be an x-intercept, that's where it's touching the x-axis, I have a y value. Anywhere along the x-axis, my y value is 0. So with that being the case, that means that I went over, for it to be an x-intercept, over -16 to the left and up 0. So that would be my coordinate. So now I have a point and a slope. So I'm going to use that point slope formula. So I'm going to label x1, y1. We're going to plug it in. Y minus the y1, which is 0, equals my slope, which is 1/2, times x minus x1, which is -16. A minus makes a plus. And now we're ready to distribute. The 1/2 has to distribute through. So y minus 0 is just y equals 1/2 x. 1/2 times 16 will be plus 8. It wanted it in slope-intercept form, and that's what we have it in. Okay, moving on to number 7. Okay, number 7 is wanting a point that is passing through these 2 points in slope-intercept form. So in order to be able to write an equation, I have to have a point and a slope, or I must, then I can use my point-slope formula, or I could have a point and a y-intercept. There is no y-intercept available on this one, so I'm going to have to actually find my slope. Remembering back to the previous lesson, the formula for slope is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So we go ahead and label these. X, y, x, y. These came first, these came second. Now we plug them straight into that formula. Y2 is 4 minus y1 is 1 over x2 is 3 minus x1, which is a minus 2. That makes a plus. 4 minus 1 is 3 over 5. So that is my slope. So now we have a slope and I have a point. I'm going to use my point-slope formula. Because I've already labeled it x1, y1, which is exactly what's in my point-slope formula, that's the ones I'm going to use. I'm not going to use the 3, 4. But I could. It would give me the same answer. I'm just going to go ahead and use the ones that are already labeled x1, y1. So the point-slope formula, y minus y1 is 1 equals my slope, which is 3/5, times x minus x1, which is a minus 2. That makes a plus. I have to distribute that 3/5 through. So y minus 1 equals 3/5 x. 3/5 times 2. That's 3 times 2 is 6 divided by 5. That comes out to 1.2. Okay. Now, I want it in slope-intercept form. That's also y equals form, which means that I have to move this -1 across. So y equals 3/5 x plus 1.2. -1 comes across as a +1. I combine those two at the end. Y equals 3/5 x plus 2.2. And that is slope-intercept form. Number 8 is exactly the same, except it wants the final answer in standard form. Okay, so here we go. We have to find our slope. So we label it x, y, x, y. These came first. These came second. Okay, y2 is 5 minus y1, which is 5, over x2 is 7, minus x1, which is a -3, makes a positive. 5 minus 5 is 0, over 10, which is 0. Okay, so my slope is 0 on this one. So I go and I plug this. I have a slope, and I have my point, my x1 and y1 here. And I'm going to go and plug that back into my point-slope formula. So y minus y1 is 5 equals my slope, which is 0, times x minus x1, which is a -3. Now, if I were to distribute that 0 through, it's going to zero everything out, because anything times 0 is 0. So we end up with y minus 5 equals 0. I want it in standard form, which means that anything that's not an x or a y has to go to the other side. So I've got to take the -5 across. So y equals a +5. And with it having a 0 slope, we see that that should be a horizontal line going through 5, crossing the y-axis. Number 9. Number 9 is asking for a parallel line going through that point, 5, -3. In order to be parallel, the slopes must be the same. They must be equal. So I've got to find the slope. How I find the slope is by putting, this is in standard form, the equation. I need to put it in y-slope-intercept form so I can identify my slope. In order to do that, I have to move my x to the other side of the equal sign. So I have 4y equals -3x plus the 8 that was already there. Then I divide everything by 4 so I can get it in y equals. And I see my slope is -3/4 x plus 2. -3/4 is my slope. And I want that to be for my new equation as well. And I have a point, so I have a point and a slope to use. I label my points x1, y1. Now I use my point slope formula. Y minus y1, which is a -3. That makes a positive. Equals slope, which is -3/4 times x minus x1, which is 5. Okay, so y plus 3 equals distribute. -3/4 times x is -3/4 x. -3/4 times -5, a negative times a negative is a positive. 3 times 5 is 15 divided by 4. 15 divided by 4 comes out to 3.75. This is wanting it in standard form, which means my x's have to go first, then my y's, then my equal sign, then my regular numbers. So I've got to switch two things. One, I've got to move my x to the front, and I got to move my 3 to the back. So it looks like this. The -3/4 becomes a +3/4 x plus the y that's already over here equals 3.75 was already on the right side. I took the +3 across, it became a -3. So final answer, 3/4 x plus y equals 0.75. That is in standard form. Now, on number 10, notice that the equation is exactly the same as it is here on 9. They're both 3x plus 4y equals 8. So we already know we've solved for what the original slope is. The original slope being -3/4. Okay, so with that in mind, we don't have to do that step again. We can just go ahead. I'm going to move over to it. And I'm going to write down that -3/4. That was my original slope. And I keep saying original because now it's wanting perpendicular. Perpendicular is exact opposite. So it's opposite sign. So it's now a positive and it's reciprocal. So I flip the fraction. So it's a +4/3. That is the slope I want to use for this one. Still have 2 points, x1, y1. So I'm going to use my point slope formula again. So y minus y1 is a -11, which makes a positive, equals my slope, my new perpendicular slope is 4/3, times x minus x1, which is 3. Y plus 11 equals 4/3 times x is 4/3 x. 4/3 times -3 is a -12/3, which is 4. Now I want slope-intercept form, so it's y equals form. So I have to move that 11 across. So y equals 4/3 x minus 4 minus 11. Final answer, y equals 4/3 thirds x minus 15. Okay, next one. We have a table. Now, using our table, it wants to write an equation in standard form of this data. From this table, I quickly can see I have a y-intercept. I know it's a y-intercept of -2 because my x value is 0. And anytime my x's are 0, then that means I have a y-intercept, that wherever it crosses the y-axis, when x is 0, is my y-intercept. So basically that point is over 0, down 2, and that would be crossing my y-axis. So I have my beginning point, my y-intercept, which is -2. Now I can pick any 2 points, any 2 sets of points I want, and find my slope. Okay, so any 2 sets, so I'm going to go ahead and just pick the bottom 2, or I'm sorry, the top 2, the smallest numbers, and I'm going to go ahead and label them. x1, y1, x2, y2. Okay, I'm going to use my slope formula, y2, 0 minus y1, which is a -2. That makes a plus. Over x2 is 6 minus x1 is 0. So that gives me 2 over 6, which reduces. What goes into 2 and 6? 2 does. 2 goes into 2 one time, goes into 6 3 times. So that is my slope. I have a slope and a y-intercept. So if I was in slope-intercept form, that would be y equals 1/3 x minus 2. But I need it in standard form. So I've got to move that x to the front. So it becomes a -1/3 x plus the y that was already waiting for me over there equals a -2. That is in standard form. Now, on the next one, we have a little problem. It doesn't have a y-intercept visible for me, so I'm going to have to create one. And that's not a problem in the sense of us being able to do it. It isn't there for me to pick out. So what I have to do is try to find a pattern. And what I'm looking for in my pattern is my x's, it goes from 1 to 3. So that's a difference of 2. So it went up 2 steps. Well, in that 2 steps, my y went down in value by 10. So from here to here and here to here. So it went up 2. This one went down 10. Okay? So if I look at it that way, and then I look at the next ones, it's 3, 4. So it only went up 1 step. And sure enough, looking over here, it goes down 5. So that's telling me that every step, if in 2 steps it went down 10, and in 1 step it went down 5, that's telling me every step it goes down 5. Okay? So if I work backwards to where I want my x, because remember to have be a y-intercept, x has to be 0. So if I work backwards, up here's where my 0 would be, because it goes 3, then 1, then 0 would be next on the number line. That means in that 1 step, I've got to go up 5 more. So if I added 5 to -8, I would get -3. And that's my y-intercept. And you can see how the numbers got smaller and smaller and smaller, but they're really actually getting closer to 0 for my y's. But it's each step is worth 5. So my y-intercept is -3. Now for my slope, I can choose any 2 points again, and I'll just pick 2 out in the middle this time. X, Y, X, Y. These came first. These came second. And I'm going to use my slope formula. Y2 is -33. Here, I'm even going to write M equals -33 minus Y1 is -23. Minus and minus make it a plus. Over x2 is 6 minus x1 is 4. Negative 33 plus 23 is a negative 10 over 2. Now I can reduce that. Negative 10 divides evenly by 2. That would be negative 5. So my slope is negative 5, y-intercept negative 3. Put it in my point slope form. I'm sorry, my slope intercept form. Y equals negative 5x minus 3. Okay. All right, and that's what it asked for with slope intercept form. Now the problems that we are doing with this one are on A2-2. So that is our assignment sheet, okay, at the back of your notes, A2-2. We are doing numbers 1, 2, 3, 5, 11, 12. Oh, nope. I am sorry. Do not scratch that. I'm taking those off. We're doing A2-2. We're going to do 1, 2, 3, 5, 9, 11, and 13. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 5, 9, 11, and 13. That's the ones you're going to do for homework. All right, let me know if you have questions. This is Notes 2-2 complete.